All right. And plenty of things on the chat. Can hear you and see, presto, not you. Okay. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the sixth and final lesson in the Be Safe in Your Space program. I'm Gary Simmons. Just get my technology all up and running. In this last lesson of the program, I'd like to tie in everything that we've touched on over the last 5 weeks so that you can help your child achieve the main aim of knowing how to be safe in your space. I'm talking about helping them to evolve into becoming the best person who they can possibly be. It's helping them move towards their own unique and great ultimate potential, whatever that might be. It's finding the confidence and self-esteem to hold their head up high around others, to look at anxiety squarely in the eye, and to have the resilience and strength of character to move through adversity and challenges by becoming stronger and smarter. It's approaching others in a spirit of friendship and charity, as well as a desire to treat all people in their life with dignity, kindness, and respect, and to have an ego that's a help and not a hindrance. So let's get started with lesson 6. Often when people ask me about martial arts training, they expect me to speak about how our classes teach boys, girls, men and women self-defense and fighting skills. When I say the programs at Shy Martial Arts are in fact personal development programs, they look at me quizzically and I have to explain what I mean. I tell them that a black belt is a martial arts student who has trained for several years. They know how to use kicks, punches, strikes, takedowns, and sparring. On paper, they look like the ideal person who could get into fights and lay out any troublemaker who was silly enough to cross them. Interestingly though, black belts tend to be the people who don't get into fights or altercations, even though they're the most qualified. They're more than qualified than most to do so. The reason for this is because the fighting skills that they learn are actually a vehicle for personal development. What I mean is that by learning how to analyze and respond to aggression and an extreme physical attack in a controlled and safe way, a black belt is able to explore, demystify, and deal with their own inner fears in a way that makes them stronger without hurting anybody else or themselves. One of the reasons why martial arts training has been so popular throughout the centuries and around the world is because it helps people discover how they may confront and deal with the ego, stress, and pain that they're likely to encounter throughout the course of their everyday life. As well as this, the inner strength, sense of peacefulness, and the absence of fear that are byproducts of regular martial arts training cause troublemakers to feel unsettled. And this is the main reason why black belts don't seem to get picked on, even though they don't advertise the fact that they are a black belt. In fact, students who regularly practice martial arts suddenly realize one day that literally life's little upsets no longer affect them in the dramatic way they once used to. This positive attitude adjustment soon makes a student's self-esteem and confidence grow and develop to a level where eventually they're able to implicitly trust their own judgment and thoughts, which dissipates the power and hold of peer group pressure and troublemakers. This sense of self-trust then allows students to shift their focus off the effects of their problems and onto ways in which to deal with them. Let's explore this more. People who have never undergone any personal development training tend to react to all situations in the same 2 to 3 ways all the time. For example, if someone with little or no personal development training feels a conflict developing, their ego may force them to react angrily or indignantly, which is likely to inflame a situation. Alternatively, another person may become submissive and allow their body, mind, or spirit to get trampled on, while others may burst into tears and run away. None of these reactions are wrong as such. In fact, in some situations, Each reaction could well be a natural and appropriate response. The problem is when any of these responses becomes a person's stock standard reaction for most of the adverse scenarios that they encounter. On the other hand, if a person who's undergone rigorous personal development and has developed life skills such as a black belt finds themselves in a potential conflict, they're able to choose how they're going to respond. Since the attributes of humility and friendliness are a part of the black belt's creed, the first thing they do in a potential conflict is to ask themselves, was I out of line by doing or saying that? If the answer is yes, a conscious person wouldn't hesitate to say, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do or say that. I was out of line, and my apologies. Conversely, if the answer is, no, I haven't done anything out of order here, this person is being mean and nasty for no reason, then the black belt can respond with something along the lines of, if you have a problem, let's hear about it. Otherwise, I'm not interested in what you have to say, so don't waste your breath. So how is this awareness or consciousness achieved? Where do we begin? Let's rewind a little, and I'll try and put it all into context. When I'm wearing my Taekwondo uniform and teaching a room full of keen students, my spirit soars like the proverbial eagle. I also feel this way when I'm able to connect with audiences at my speaking and training events. During these times, I feel as though my senses and emotions are alive and hours seem like minutes. I experience a real and pure adrenaline rush. I also achieve this state at varying levels when I'm surfing my favourite location, watching Australia play international rugby, or while skiing on a beautiful mountain. At other times, I experience another more subtle yet equally enjoyable buzz when I'm surrounded by nature, playing music, or sharing the company of my friends and loved ones. Even though the things I just described might make others cringe, they are what I need as a person. There are some of the many things that my inner voice or higher self calls me to do so I can gain chi. When I pursue my callings, I feel balanced and contented. I feel as if I know the purpose for my being on this planet, and the grass is not greener anywhere else. These are the times when I'm on course towards my zenith. It's often said that life's a journey, and throughout this program, I refer to a person's zenith as being a conceptual destination toward their ultimate potential as an individual. All people need to constantly challenge and extend themselves, or they risk languishing in survival mode by being stressed out or by being perpetually ego-driven and living from whim to whim. The human body, mind and spirit must constantly develop and grow, or we stagnate and lose chi. Luckily, everyone's designed so they're able to reach their individual ultimate potential, whatever that looks like. Unfortunately, not many people are aware of this. For most of us, identifying our own true needs and callings can be slightly or very confronting. Often it takes much contemplation, digging, and sometimes even a degree of emotional turmoil to sort it all out. However, when an individual can successfully satisfy their need for stimulation and growth, their life becomes full of chi, energy, or power, and their potential for success in all facets of life expands and extends. When people feel balanced like this, they're free to travel on their life's pathway instead of languishing away from it. They also exude a type of intangible power, energy, or charisma which acts as a repellent for troublemakers. Anyone can achieve their own sense of freedom if they gradually and continually redefine and extend their personal horizons or comfort zones to more stimulating and challenging heights. So, when does this journey start? It can start as soon as an individual is motivated or inspired enough to do so. The biggest potential hurdle for people embarking on this journey is that it may require the need to implement some very drastic changes to their attitude and outlook to life. It's different for kids. They're a blank slate, a sponge. They're just waiting to soak up every experience and lesson that life has to offer. As your child's parent, it's your job to not just look after your kids in the traditional sense, with the added role of being their coach, mentor, and tactician. It's also your job to provide them with constant and ongoing guidance and mentorship. This involves you investing a considerable amount of time and consistent effort into your own personal development as well as into your kids. Being sponges, kids will inevitably model themselves on whoever resonates with them the most. If you're a steady, strong, reliable, and consistent example for them, chances are this person will be you. That's why it's critical that you personify to your kids what being the best person you can be looks like. They need a strong foundation to build upon so they're able to discover for themselves how to develop their character and personality to an extent where they can strive forth into life without picking up the unnecessary, stifling, messy, and damaging baggage that inhibits growth, happiness, and subsequent success. It can be difficult saying no to a persistent and whingy child who knows how to push your buttons when you're feeling exhausted, run off your feet, and stressed. The good news is that kids who have parents like you who are prepared to do what it takes to help nurture and build up their child's inner strength and fortitude by embarking on a program such as this, give their kids a huge start in life and a major advantage over those poor children who get to call the shots and dictate to their hapless parents what they want or what they're going to do when they have zero life skills. Helping your child to strive toward reaching their zenith also involves who they attract into their life and how they respond to these people. This is the integral link between being safe in your space and your ultimate potential. Unfortunately, there's no magic bullet for achieving this. Instead, I do believe that there are 9 key attributes or foundations that we must all develop and constantly work upon within ourselves so we can become the best person that we need to be in a practical sense, rather than within the context of an ungrounded and airy-fairy concept. It's vital for your child, your family, and our community that you work diligently in helping to coach your child to grasp and implement each of these 9 foundations. Let's now go through each of them one by one so we can discuss how you can introduce as well as inspire and engage your child to do the work that's needed to develop each one. Responsibility. The opportunity or ability to act independently and take decisions without authorization. In my opinion, our society has a huge problem around the concept of responsibility. In lesson 1, we spoke about the importance of consequences. We looked at how consequences, good or bad, are a direct result of how responsible we are to a particular outcome. Good consequences are a result of being sufficiently committed or responsible for a desired outcome to be achieved. On the other hand, a bad outcome can often be put down to not being responsible enough to ensure that everything that needs to be done for success is being adhered to. Understandably, all people want the privilege of having freedom and rights. A sometimes harsh reality is that these privileges, and most others for that matter, come with responsibility. Unfortunately, this is where a lot of people fall short. They want it both ways. They want privilege and freedom with little or no responsibility. Unfortunately, life doesn't work like that, which can be a difficult and confronting lesson for a young person to learn. We all know people who blame their woes on their upbringing, the government, their boss, their financial situation, their spouse, and the list goes on. Another reality of life is that we reap what we sow and that we are accountable for our own outcomes and mistakes. My martial arts school makes a good example of when kids are and are not responsible for themselves. It's surprising how often when a parent of a preteen or teen either calls me or approaches me with deep concern in their voice about, Why didn't Timmy get his green belt? When I reply, Timmy didn't know XYZ move and he could have tried a lot harder. Then the excuses start. Timmy didn't know what to do. No one showed him that. Timmy's been busy with schoolwork. Timmy's had a lot on lately. And then I point out, we show all our students in class what to do. Also, if Timmy looked at the website, which we constantly remind the students to do, he'd know how to do XYZ because there's a how to do XYZ training video. We also have dedicated staff who are more than happy to answer questions and work one-on-one with students such as Timmy who need some extra help at no extra cost. XYZ is relatively easy to learn. If Timmy invested 3 times a day to practice for 3 days, as we suggested, he wouldn't know it like the other kids do. XYZ is not that complicated. It's just a sequence of a few hand moves with some steps. He and the other kids are definitely capable of picking it up despite their workload. Then, when I go on to explain that not getting a green belt is not a punishment, all it means is that Timmy is prioritising his energy into other areas of his life right now, which is okay because he's making good progress in those endeavours. All he needs to do to move forwards is to take responsibility for himself, do the work and practice XYZ for a little while, and then he can easily get his new belt next month. Quite often, this leads to Timmy's friend Johnny is getting his green belt and Timmy's feeling left out. Sadly, these parents don't get it. And by taking this route, they're enabling their child to be a serial underachiever. Let me explain. Instead of saying, oh, okay, I see. This is a good lesson for Timmy. He really does need to learn that if he doesn't put the work in, he won't get the results. I'll definitely encourage Timmy to practice XYZ so they can pass his tests next month. Thanks. Too often, though, I hear parents come into their Timmy's rescue by trying to shield him from the discomfort and disappointment of not getting a shiny new coloured belt when he wants it. I try to explain to them that a belt is just a piece of fabric. It's a thing, like an Xbox. It's the same with the XYZ move. The important issue here is Timmy's commitment to his own outcome and being responsible for himself to a degree where he can achieve it. When I ask these parents, when should we teach Timmy about how important it is to be responsible for himself? Should we give in now and wait till he's 12? Would when he's 14 years old be better? What about when he's 16? If you've been relaxed about helping your child to be responsible for themselves, start with a system of earning pocket money for chores. It can be argued that there are pros and cons for this concept, but I believe the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages. To set this up, wait till they start wanting more and more money from you. Then organise a meeting where you sit down together and work out how much money they actually need per week for their pocket money. Then add a little bit more to get their interest. From here, you work out what is a fair chore schedule. Tell them how important it is to be responsible for their own outcomes and to earn their privileges by contributing to the family. Explain how these are the chores that they'll need to do by a certain time and day. Be really clear on times. It may be worthwhile to draw up a roster and stick it on the fridge. Then explain how from now on, they'll only be given pocket money for discretionary spending and it's up to them to budget, save and use it as they see fit. Make it clear that if they spend it, they can't come back to ask for more. Also explain that there'll be a financial penalty by means of a sliding scale for the chores that are not done within the designated times. Then you have to be ruthless in enforcing the system. Undoubtedly, it will be a little bit uncomfortable for you both as you get used to this new world order. However, you cannot and must not compromise your child's personal development just because it makes you feel good by being kind, generous, motherly, or soft. Remember, in these types of conversations, you need to be the parent and not necessarily their friend. It's imperative that you coach your child in this vital life skill so they can then build on their skill to become responsible for getting to school on time, submitting homework assignments, their behaviour and their life. I must stress, if you do anything, please start teaching your child how to be responsible for themselves now, from tomorrow, because your child, their future family, and our community desperately need this. Confidence. The feeling or belief that one can have faith in or rely on someone or something. On a daily basis, most children go out in the world and square up to a relentless enemy. I'm referring to the negative inner voice from the ego that sabotages self-confidence and creates a low self-esteem, self-doubt, lack of focus, and the inability to focus or set and achieve goals. I'm too ... Everyone else is ... I can't do ... Self-talk like this can be debilitating for anyone. However, for kids in particular, beliefs like these can be devastating and have long-lasting and far-reaching effects on their lives. Most parents know that even just talking about these problems can be very difficult for kids, while actually doing something can seem just about impossible. Then if there's any bullying going on, or if your child is faced with negative peer group pressure, any lack of self-esteem or confidence can be compounded. In my 25 years experience of teaching girls, boys, men and women, I've noticed that in everyday life, most people tend to hold themselves back from reaching their maximum potential due to an unjustified lack of confidence. This lack of confidence manifests itself as fear, specifically the fear of failure, the fear of looking stupid, the fear of not being accepted or not being good enough. The list goes on. There's also research around which indicates that besides a sudden illness, injury, or perhaps public speaking, physical violence is generally regarded by our society as one of the worst things that could happen to a person in everyday life. And the media backs this up on a daily basis. Strangely enough, as in public speaking, the fear of something has a far worse effect on a person than the actual cause of the fear. We all know people who can become physically sick at the prospect of speaking in public, right? This principle applies in varying degrees to all fears. I've also noticed that some parents unwittingly facilitate their child's lack of confidence by quite simply overprotecting them. They try and identify and remove every single discomfort, inconvenience, and risk. It's natural for parents to want the best for their kids, and so they strive to take charge by micromanaging every aspect of their child's life. However, the only way kids can learn to overcome their fear is to tackle their particular fear head-on themselves. For example, at my martial arts school, which is in fact a microcosm of our society, I have a special program for preteens where certain kids are invited to apply to join by a specific date. I go to great lengths to explain what the application process entails and how parents are not to assist in the application. I clearly spell out that parents can coach but not assist. I stress in the information section that it's not a writing, spelling or grammar test. The main criteria for joining this program is effort. However, I'm amazed at how often a parent leans over our reception desk and casually drops off an envelope and says, "Here's Johnny's application." That's the first mistake, because I specifically say that the child must be the one to hand it over. Every aspect of this program, including at the application, is a carefully thought out and systemized process. Then, on a regular basis, when I open up the envelope, instead of seeing the familiar childlike letter, I received a typed letter that reads like a job application, such as, "Dear Sir, My application. I would hereby like to apply for a position in the Shire Martial Arts BBC program. Of course, the parent's heart is in the right place when they do this, but their efforts are misguided and unhelpful for their child. The whole point of this program is to increase a child's confidence and self-esteem so they can firstly plan a date for when they can achieve their black belt, and more importantly, be able to believe that they can do it. It's a system that we have to help kids learn how the only way they can achieve something is to do the work. Needless to say, when I get an application like this, I gather the parent and the child together, where I voice my disapproval at the parent's attempt to expedite their child's application to make it easy for them, as well as the child's lack of ownership of the task. I then hand back the envelope and spell out to them both exactly how I want the application to be submitted next time. Assertiveness. Confident and forceful behaviour. A major part of knowing how to be safe in your space is to be assertive. I'm not talking about being pushy, argumentative, belligerent, disrespectful or rude. When it comes to knowing how to be safe in your space, I'm referring to being able to stand up for yourself in a confident way so you can gain face and where the troublemaker doesn't lose it. In Lesson 5, we looked at how sometimes there are circumstances in life where it becomes necessary to stand up for yourself. We looked at how if a confident child, well-versed in knowing how to be safe in their space, found themselves being continually taunted by a troublemaker, a classy, face-gaining way to put the troublemaker in their place could be to say something along the lines of, "Hey, why are you giving me such a hard time? I'm just here playing with my friends, and then you came over here and started being mean for no reason. That's bullying. Are you a bully? Is that what you're doing? My teacher has told us that if any bigger kid starts to bully us in the playground, we should report it straight away. All my friends here have seen you do it. So if you don't leave me alone right now, that's what I'm going to do." Then, if your child's really confident, they would add, "Or you could come and join us if you promise to stay cool. It's up to you." Being assertive in a way where no one loses face takes a lot of confidence. So working on your child's confidence is a good place to start in helping them become comfortable with being assertive. To help stimulate the conversation about being assertive, go back to the comeback lines that were a part of the Lesson 2 homework. Explain to your child how and why some of these lines need to be delivered in an assertive way. Then put your heads together and think of some scenarios that require some assertiveness and take turns in practicing some comebacks together. Remember to use the voice of authority when you're being assertive. You'll definitely have some fun with this. Resilience. The capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. Toughness. My martial arts school also has a teen employment program where we teach our students from as young as 11 years old to become paid martial arts assistants with a pathway to eventually becoming fully qualified instructors. When these students are learning about effective communication, one of the exercises the group does is to distinguish how the fear of something is a lot worse than the actual source of the fear, as we've just discussed. In this situation, we have an exercise that helps to demonstrate how the fear of public speaking is worse than actually doing it. We start off by getting a show of hands to see who feels nervous about public speaking, which is always the majority. Then we have a discussion where the group lists all the things that they can think of as to why people would be afraid of public speaking, and we write it on the whiteboard. Invariably, when we see things such as looking stupid, making a mistake, being laughed at, being judged, not knowing what to say, as some of the main issues or fears. Next, we get one of the older, more confident team members to make an impromptu speech. Then every 20 seconds or so, we stop them, and each member of the group gets to call out to the team member making the speech the fears that are listed on the whiteboard. For example, "Tim, you're not making any sense. You sound really dumb." You look so stupid up there, Tim. What gives you the right to talk to us? Anyway, I'm sure you get the idea. Then everybody gets a turn at speaking in front of the group and being directly confronted with the listed fears. What does this achieve? Well, it's a lot, but for our purposes now, it teaches resilience. The way to develop resilience is to confront whatever is causing anxiety or fear head on. Our body knows this. If we have a weak area, the body will develop muscle to compensate for the weakness. If the skin is weak, we develop a callus to protect the weak area. The only way you can teach your child resilience is to be their wingman and help them work through it. You can't shield or protect them. Sure, they might have to start off slowly and gently, but start they must. For parents, this is when the going gets tough, particularly if your kids haven't been encouraged to do this before, because it might be stressful, it may be uncomfortable, and there will be some pain. Try doing a variation of the public speaking exercise that I just described. Firstly, distinguish what is causing the anxiety or the fear, and then confront it head on in an unemotional and analytical way, and then try to dismantle it. In the scheme of things, these discomforts and inconveniences will be fleeting, while the ability to develop resilience will be life-changing. Empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Empathy leads the way to compassion, kindness, and the spirit of friendship and charity. When you understand the concepts such as subtext, which we spoke about in Lesson 4, it's possible to relate to and understand the people you meet and interact with without really knowing them personally. It's possible to connect as two human beings, even if one of those people is a troublemaker and is completely consumed by their ego. I've designed the following scenarios and hypothetical questions as an exercise to help you coach your child so they can really come to terms with how empathy relates to someone on a personal level. The idea is to impress on your child the importance of really imagining what it would be like if they are the actual person in each of the scenarios. Are you ready? Situation 1. Question. Can you think of a kid at school who's not doing well and seems to be always getting into trouble? Answer. Yes, it's Johnny. Here are some examples of the hypothetical questions. When Johnny gets into trouble at school, how do you think he would feel? Do you think he'd feel pleased? No? Why not? How would the person who sits next to Johnny feel when he misbehaves and distracts the class? Do you think they might worry that they'll get into trouble because of Johnny? Yeah? Why? How do you think Johnny's teacher, Mrs. Smith, would feel when she sees Johnny misbehaving and not paying attention and he's disrupting the class? Do you think Mrs. Smith wants Johnny to get into trouble? Do you think Mrs. Smith is pleased when she punishes Johnny? No? Why not? How do you think Johnny's mum would feel when she learns that Johnny has been in trouble at school again? Do you think that she'd be upset? If Johnny gets into trouble a lot, do you think Johnny's mum would be used to it by now and would still be upset? Yeah? Why? Let's try one more scenario. If you found a purse in the park and it had $100 in it, how would that make you feel? Here are a few more hypothetical questions. If that was your purse and you lost the $100 that you got for your birthday, how would you feel? Why? What if someone who was really rich found the purse? What would they be feeling? Why? What if the purse belonged to someone's grandma who had just got $100 from the ATM so she could give it to her granddaughter for her birthday? How would she be feeling? Why? What if that purse belonged to a mum who didn't have much money and that $100 was all the money she had to buy food for her family for the rest of the week? How would she be feeling? Why? It's important to not rush through this exercise. Take your time with it. You may need to break it down and revisit it from time to time when you catch your child being selfish, and change the scenario to something that they have or are experiencing. Remember, a discussion like this takes a lot of effort, commitment, and time on your part. You'll also need to empathize with your child so you can initiate a discussion like this at the right moment. Compassion. Sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. When a person has empathy, they're able to develop compassion, which is vital for knowing how to be safe in your space. The alternative is to be a narcissist who's only concerned with their own happiness, desires, or whims. I'm sure you can think of people who you know on either side of the spectrum. Ask yourself, which people are the happiest and most contented? The compassionate people or the narcissists? By coaching your child on the foundation of compassion, you're firstly helping them to be more likable and therefore in a position to make more friends, which helps them to develop their emotional intelligence, which in turn leads them to having successful and meaningful personal and eventually professional relationships throughout their life. As well as that, if they're able to understand the subtext or motivation behind someone being either a troublemaker, show-off, or a narcissist, they may be able to see that the reason why someone is mean, annoying, or stupid is because they've had a difficult life. A child who displays negative behavior or character traits may come from an unhappy home. They may suffer financial hardship. A parent may be a volatile alcoholic, or a sibling may be incessantly bullying or harassing them. The point is that if a person is treated with compassion, their hard edge is likely to soften, which makes them more agreeable to be around. This could be instrumental in creating a peer group that has minimal conflicts going on, as opposed to one that's constantly being gripped by torment and discontent. In the example I used earlier for the foundation of assertiveness, when the confident child stands up to the bully and adds, or you'd come and join us if you promise to stay cool, it's up to you. This is one way in which the foundation of compassion can be applied within the context of knowing how to be safe in your space. The other context is if your child has a propensity to hit other kids or be a bully themselves. In most cases, an effective approach would be to start a conversation in the way where they could emphasize with the kids who they harass, manipulate, or pick on as a lead-in to coach them about compassion. For example, Susie has very low confidence. So if you tell her that she can't play with you and the other girls, it makes her really sad because it feels like she doesn't have any friends. That would be an awful feeling, wouldn't it? How about from now on, you go out of your way to be really kind and friendly to Susie? I bet if you do that, not only would she feel better, but you and all the other girls would too, because you'll all be looking out for each other and helping each other, just like we do here at home. Wouldn't that be good? Try and help them to grasp the link that compassion is inextricably linked with empathy. Respect. A feeling of deep admiration for someone or something elicited by their abilities, qualities, or achievements. Respect for yourself, your family, your community, for fellow human beings, for nature, and our environment is another key foundation for knowing how to be safe in your space and for life itself. When it comes to our interpersonal relationships, we must all be responsible for ourselves by being respectful towards others. However, to get respect, we have to earn it. The first step in teaching a child about respect is to coach them about gaining respect for themselves. This starts in taking pride in what you do. For example, earlier we touched on how a good way to help a child learn about responsibility is to make them accountable for completing their chores in a timely manner. You hear that rain? This also applies to the way in which they complete their chores. As you are no doubt aware, a lot of kids will try and get away with doing their chores with a shoddy, half-hearted attempt by just going through the motions so they can get paid as quickly as possible. You have a huge responsibility to make sure they don't get away with doing this. For example, if their chore was to rake up the leaves in the back garden and they quickly whipped around and merely pushed the leaves into the garden bed instead of into the green waste bins and didn't neatly put away the gardening tools, you'd be doing your child a huge disservice if you finished off the job yourself and put the tools away. Instead, it's critical that you train your child exactly what it is that you expect from them. In my martial arts school, we have a system of reprimanding kids with PCP, which is praise, correct, praise. So instead of saying, Timmy, you did a lousy job raking up the leaves today, it'd be far more effective to say, Timmy, I saw you working hard in the backyard before, well done. I must say though, I saw a few areas in that job that were not done quite right and need some fixing. Please come out with me and I'll show you what I mean. From here, explain exactly what it is you expect. And if it's their first time, help them out with a chore so they know what a good result looks like. When you both finish, tell them, now that's more like it. Well done. Thanks for helping me out. Once they can do the job satisfactorily and in a timely manner and without bad attitude, it could be an idea to say something along the lines of, I've been really impressed at the quality of your work lately. I'm so happy, I think I might have to give you a bonus this week. Well done. Then, of course, you have to follow through and give them a bonus. A caution, though, don't go over the top. Just make the bonus a small token to reinforce your approval. If they've been lacking in another area and you were forced to penalise them, maybe a good job elsewhere can counteract the penalty. From this point, it'll become far easier to coach your child about the wider implications of respect, such as the importance of respecting their elders, the law, their property, and other people. Loyalty. Giving or showing firm and constant support or allegiance to a person or institution. We've discussed a lot throughout this program how a lot of social problems for kids occur within the framework of their peer group and friends. It seems for kids that their friends today can be rivals tomorrow. Allegiances ebb and flow and change from week to week. The need to be accepted and to be part of a group is important for everybody. For kids, however, it's crucial. The play environment is a natural place for kids to test out their political allegiances and gamemanship skills. It's also a time to practice and test out their networking and socialization skills so that later on in life they can nurture and navigate their way through the intricate relationships that we all need to cope with to succeed in our complex and social society. Some kids, particularly the younger ones, often need help in distinguishing and understanding the nuances that encompass the concept of loyalty. One of the problems I see with kids' socialization skills, I must say with some adults, is their need for approval, which is an ego-driven desire. Often this manifests itself in the desire for immediate gratification, with little or no thought about consequences, other people's feelings, or for future relationships. For example, if the alpha leader of a group is named Jessica, often the less conscious and more insecure kids will rally around Jessica in the hope of receiving acknowledgement, energy, or chi from her to fill the gap that their low self-esteem leaves inside them. So if two friends, who we'll call Susie and Rachel, are in a peer group like this, they need to receive fleeting approval by a cooler, older, or edgier girl like Jessica could lead to a significant wedge between the two girls who have a common history and situation. That is, unless they understand about loyalty. As adults, we know and understand that loyalty is the essence of strong and rewarding relationships. On the other hand, kids tend to live in the moment, so they can and quite often do pursue whatever's going to satisfy them right now. For Susie, this might mean ditching Rachel today to be tight with Jessica, with little or no thought as to how this will affect Rachel. A good way to initiate a loyalty discussion for boys is to use sport. such as football, cricket, or baseball as an example. You can analyse how the players interact with each other when they're winning or when things aren't going well. Point out what they do. What is the subtext that motivates them? Discuss who are they playing for, and so on. This could also work for girls, but an alternative example would be to examine the interactions of their favourite girl or boy band. In their music videos, these groups portray themselves as a band of brothers or a sisterhood who are united together in their quest for having fun and being creative. I'm sure you get my gist. Having philosophical discussion with your child about concepts such as loyalty can be very rewarding for them and for you. Try and make this a regular part of your relationship because they'll never forget this quality time that they spend with you. Tolerance. The ability or willingness to tolerate something, in particular, the existence of opinions or behaviour that one does not necessarily agree with. Tolerance may be a simple word, yet it can be one of the most difficult of the 9 foundations to maintain. Our tolerance is tested on a daily and sometimes even on an hourly basis. Think about it. How tolerant are you if your significant other makes a mistake? How do you react? How do you react when your child breaks something? What happens when a payment gets messed up and you get overcharged? No matter who we are, it's safe to say that on some level, we all must struggle to manage our tolerance. I believe that this is why most people tend to congregate around and socialise with people who are just like them. So how do you introduce a concept like this to a child? Well, I believe you have to wait till you catch them out doing something wrong, such as lying, being dishonest, breaking other people's property, or any deed where they normally find themselves in hot water. Once you have a situation like this, take the empathy approach and start a conversation along the lines of, how would you feel if ... Then you can take the concept of empathy to the next level by guiding the conversation in the direction of, what would it be like for your teacher? She has to put up with you misbehaving as well as all those other kids. Why do you think she puts up with it? The answer will be, I don't know. Well, she's tolerant. Although she may not show it in the classroom, most teachers are people who want to help young people be the best and smartest person they can be so that one day they can get a good job and have a family of their own. No one likes to be around people who are rude and disrespectful, including teachers, but they do nearly every day because they've learned to be tolerant. Being tolerant is very important for teaching kids how to be smart because it can often be a slow and difficult process. An alternative to this approach could be for a dad who has to speak to their child about having a bad attitude and behaviour at home. The conversation can go along the lines of, how do you think mum feels when she gets you home after school and you've been disrespectful and lazy? I don't know. Well, I know that mum feels very sad and upset, and that makes me sad and upset. Let me ask you something. Did you have a nice dinner last night? Yeah. What about breakfast and your school lunch? Were they nice? You think that you'll be eating a nice meal tonight? Yes. Did your bed have nice sheets? Were your clothes nice and clean and comfortable? Yes. Well, mum did that for you because she loves you. Despite that, though, you've been quite mean and nasty towards her. Would you agree with that? How would you treat someone who's younger than you and is mean and nasty towards you for no reason? Would you get upset? Well, it's no different from mum. The only difference is she's developed tolerance. What that means, instead of her thinking, oh, that's it, I've had enough. My kid's being so nasty, I'm not going to cook dinner for them tonight. She still does. What's your tolerance like? How are you if your brother takes the last cookie or your sister plays with the iPad for too long? Are you tolerant? Anyway, I'm sure you get the idea. All of these 9 foundations stand alone, yet, as we've discussed, they're all inextricably linked with one another. Collectively, they exemplify how the pursuit of being the best person you can be, as well as being confident enough to be safe in your space, are part part of a holistic way of successfully managing interpersonal relationships, thinking, as well as living. Once you've started tackling the conversations about the 9 foundations for being safe in your space, there are plenty more discussions ahead with the 7 attributes for harmonious relationships, including restraint, fairness, friendship, justice, equality, honour, and kindness. As your child begins to develop their 9 foundations, there's no doubt a day will come when they ask you this very legitimate question. Why should I be the one who must always back down and look for passive solutions when I'm the one who always goes out of my way to avoid trouble or problems with people? Remember, as your child's mentor and tactician, you also have a responsibility to temper your child's newfound edge with humility and grace, or you risk creating a pompous, self-righteous monster. A good way to explain it could go like this. Whenever we hear ourselves think, why should I? It's the voice of our ego when it's feeling indignant. We examined this in lesson 4. Go on to say, to live a life attempting to be in harmony with the body, mind, and spirit requires us to have a considerable level of commitment, application, and energy. So by being around people who need to constantly vent their insecurities and frustration on others by being troublemakers has the effect of draining this energy away from us. Anyone who's constantly subjected to these kinds of frustrations and aggression are often forced to live in a constant state of stress every single day, which makes it almost impossible for them to feel contentment or genuine happiness. Being associated with or being around any negative troublemaker is just not worth it because they don't allow you to be you, which is unfair and unacceptable. Therefore, the motivation for always looking at the passive options is to choose the life path where it's possible to receive energy, joy, and contentment as opposed to having it sucked away. If you think about it, troublemakers are like happiness vampires. Who needs that? Do you understand what I mean? Do you know any happiness vampires? How do they suck away people's happiness? Throughout this program, I've discussed many different strategies and methods that'll minimize the chance of being targeted by a troublemaker. We also looked at a variety of other options for those times when we must inadvertently interact with one. The whole point of my Be Safe in Your Space program for teens concept is to equip parents so that they are in turn able to equip their kids with some tools and systems that will enable them to feel confident, contented, and successful on a regular and sustainable basis. The reason why I want people to feel like this is because positive attitudes such as these are the most conducive for tapping into those natural talents that all of us are born with, and is precisely what anxiety, low self-esteem, and self-doubt destroy or prevent from developing. Once an individual can access their talents, they become full of confidence and self-esteem, which allows them to be the best person they can possibly be in all endeavours. Find the courage to awaken and nurture the hidden and suppressed talents that you, as a decent human being, were born with, so you can help your child do the same. Give yourself permission to soar forward towards your zenith, and then you'll inspire your child to do so too. Remember, the trick in finding your zenith is again the mindset to savor the journey rather than anticipating the destination. Although we've reached the end of the Be Safe in Your Space for Preteens program, it's actually a new beginning for the relationship between you and your child, as you make the decision and the commitment to embrace your new and expanded role as your child's confidant, tactician, and coach. We covered a lot over the last 6 weeks, and I recommend that you review the material from this program a few times by watching the video replays as well as listening to the audio. As I mentioned earlier, the concepts, strategies, tactics, and techniques within the Be Safe in Your Space program are integrated to an extent that a point or explanation in the earlier sessions may resonate with you more now, once you revisit them with your increased experience and knowledge. As well as that, I encourage you to revise the practical techniques that are within the homework modules, as they'll help the Be Safe in Your Space program, as they will help the Be Safe in Your Space program become a practical framework for improving the quality of life for your child and yourself. As I create more materials, I'll continue to share them with you. So if you have any final questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box, post them in the Be Safe in Your Space Facebook group, or email. Before I go, I'd like to sincerely thank you for joining me on this journey. I look forward to hearing how you help your child be safe in their space. So if there are any questions, or you'd like to just type them into the box.